Welcome back, Jesper.
Thank you. And thank you, Monika. I found it very interesting how you have put like design and UX at the center of your organization, and how you work with these questions. I just want to, sorry for cutting in now, Rory, but I just wanted to ask something about that, because it's something that I've been thinking a lot about as well. And we don't have a team of 11 UX designers. We are only one at the moment. Like we're just starting out our journey with like the visual design in that regard. We always had one, but we decided to have UX design as a part of the product team, just to involve them very early and work closely with the end users and where the actually product research is being made. But I was wondering a little bit about how you have organized like the UX and design in your development process, and to make sure you get it at this early stage. So that I was a bit curious about that, actually.
Yeah, so I think again, I think it just comes quite naturally to us, and it's probably driven by how we were structured from the very beginning. So we never had to make an effort to put designers in any special position. The other thing I would mention is that all designers kind of belong to the product design team, but they're also design leaders in their respective product teams. So they're constantly working. They're actually spending way more time with their product teams than they're spending with the design team. So they're just part of all the conversations. Every stand up, they talk about, they make decisions, they share insights, customer feedback. So designers are just always there, part of the product team. So they never have to fight for a seat at the table. They're just an integral part. And thirdly, I would mention that it's one of the things that we value, that we've pointed out as a success metric for our team, is how much designers contribute to innovation in their product teams. So we're very, very clear on designers and PMs and everyone else that they work with, so that designers have a role and they have a say in these things, and they're even expected to drive innovation, come with ideas, and work very closely with the PMs and the engineers and everyone else on the team.
How do you measure kind of the impact? If you're saying that they're being challenged to drive innovation, how do you measure that?
It's very simple. I send out a survey to all the PMs every month, and I just ask them, last month, how much do you feel like your designer has contributed to, not just it's not about how many ideas they had, but you can contribute to innovation with your attitude, with asking questions, with just being a part of that innovation spirit. And sometimes it's harder to answer that question, and sometimes it's just it's not an exact science, but I think you can answer that question from a scale 1 to 5, and make sure that designers know that they're being evaluated this way. So that will push them. And we track these metrics, and I share them with the whole team every month.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I found this very interesting. So, I mean, just before there was the shift from traditional product management with list of requirements and sending it to the dev team, do this, and the shift now has been more to a Scrum or Agile with a product owner doing the user stories. But I mean, this might be the next step of the evolution of product management and how you product develop in very visual products, where you have a user flow. Maybe a designer, a UX designer, should drive that instead of. I haven't heard of it being in the center so much. So I really, it's intrigued me a lot. That's an idea.
I think even more so. I think it can be in the forefront in many ways. I think that designers traditionally have been taught that they need to go through this very rigid, design thinking process where they have to do all the research and they have to do these user maps and user personas and whatnot before they can even start playing around with something visual. The designers actually have this very unique skill to actually create visual stuff, and they're just like not making use of that. So I want to kind of flip things around. I love saying, we have an idea. Let's just, create a very quick and dirty mock and see how it feels. And now suddenly it's so much easier to feedback. It's so much easier to test. It's so much easier to show it to someone and say, like, does this make sense? Where would you, what would you do with this next? And it's also that way it's easier to drive innovation in a team, right? Where you can say, hey, I have an idea and I can show it to you. And that's the skill designers have. So I always encourage people to, make use of that.
Yeah, the triad that a lot of people talk about, it's kind of design, engineering, PM, where they're all working together right at that start, just throwing out ideas, and you can come up with the speed at which you can move then and kind of come up with valuable, usable ideas is great.
I mean, of course, it's much easier. We try to also involve like users early to have something to click on instead of describing it's in text. I mean, you can't relate that to something. Like, if you have something clickable, I mean, you can get some very different feedback, of course. So I think that's a good approach. Sure.
I have one question actually that came up, and I'm going to I'll direct it at both of you, but I'll start with Monika. In your talk, you were talking about the universal checkout, and I love the way that you said instead of kind of doing all these features, you flipped it to modules that then the end user could kind of turn them on and off. From a design perspective, how did you manage that? Because you're then giving so much control to the user that maybe they've turned off like 3 things and turned on another one, and now you've got a kind of a skewed design because it doesn't quite fit anymore. So how did you manage that where you were giving that level of flexibility to the end user?
So if you're using universal checkout as it is coming out of the box, we still control the layout, right? So we give you can think of it as Lego pieces, right? They're still designed by Lego. They fit nicely together because we've made sure that the pieces will fit nicely together. And you could toggle on all of them and they will still make sense because they're positioned such that they do make sense. Well, developers and merchants still have control over the styling, but this way they can just very easily in the UI choose which features they want to toggle on and off. And of course, if they're using headless universal checkout, then they're free to do whatever they want.
Whatever. And you mentioned, because there's one bit was the toggling on and off, and then there was the styling that people, because they wanted it in their colors or those kind of things. How much control did you really give people there? Because again, it could fall into that kind of things just don't look right or something, or is that just that's their responsibility because when you gave it to them, it looked nice and then they were the ones who went and changed it?
Yeah, so the thing with Primer is that we don't want to push our brand. Like when you're using Primer's Universal Checkout, there is no like Primer sticker or logo on it. It comes with a very simple, neutral design that I think still looks decent, but it's very, very simple. It's not meant to be designed in any way. It will fit nicely into like a white, website, and it's fine if you don't touch the styling. But we actually encourage merchants. Most merchants will want to style it because you want it to fit nicely with your website font and your colors and your borders and styles. So yeah, they should have full control. There's no reason why you should have, a Primer branded or, a branded checkout at all.
Okay, excellent. It's a good approach to it. I'm going to flip it. It's a similar but slightly different question now to Jesper. So you mentioned how one of your big learnings was that you just have to keep getting smaller and smaller and small iterations and more rapid kind of delivery. So I've seen a lot of places run into a kind of an issue that actually Monika talked about, a very elegant way of coming around it, but that if you're constantly just looking at these small pieces, who's making sure that the big picture all fits together and you don't end up with a kind of a Frankenstein style kind of product in the end because you're just plugging all of these extra small pieces together?
Sure, and I mean, I think that approach is used to like in different what you say, like abstraction levels also in the design or product development. And I think it's mostly when we construct stories and want to develop specific features that we know we want, to not make this mistake that we did with the big project that took 2 years and didn't lead anywhere. If we rather want to break it down to smaller pieces. Let's say we do 2 out of 10 things, we still can deliver something with the value. And I think it's me as the head of product, I will be responsible for the overall roadmap to understand, okay, how does these features fit together, and are we moving in the right direction? So it's more up to our designers and product owners to delivering the special feature to understand, like, how do we fit the pieces together. And one interesting thing I thought about now that Monika also mentioned, talking about the modularization. I mean, that's basically what saved us from our previous errors. Instead of trying to build something that fits everyone, or a very specific solution for a certain client, instead we're building pieces that they also can put together to make the system that they want. Because we have a very wide what's it called, like a range of stakeholders also, like within the companies we work for. Like, firstly, everyone has properties, right, and buildings, investment companies, housing companies. So we have a lot of different industries we're working in, and in these companies we also have the technicians that want the data because they need to understand how to make the best decisions in the buildings for conserving energy. And we have the high-level executives who want the reportings for yearly reports. And we have to understand all of these needs. But what we did before, we had everything in a monolith. It was like, that was a problem. If you went into our app, you could see everything, and I mean, it scares people, because if you don't just only use 10%, you don't want to see everything else, right? So that's where modularization and putting the small pieces together in packages that were directed to a certain target group really has helped us to come past this problem. So we use modularization instead of customization, basically. So being able to have a quite flexible system will ensure that our users can get what they want, and only that, without having to make custom things for them.
Yeah.
That answered the question. I spaced out a little bit there as well, but
no, I love that approach. And one kind of, it's almost a devil's advocate, because I've seen this a few times where people go, oh, like you mentioned, we swung the pendulum a little bit too far, where we just went solely tech focused. But sometimes I see companies where they have so much tech debt, and just the way things are, they really have to kind of just swing away to focus and just tidy up the house a little bit before you can really start delivering those features. So how much do you think that was part of your swing, was to enable what you just talked about there, was that kind of separation and the modularization? And how much of that was kind of necessary, or do you still think that you even went a bit further than was necessary?
I mean, I think we probably definitely went a bit too far in that, and for a too long period of time. Like, we sorted our debt, but then continued to work in that way, because we could see that it produced good things, but it was only like tech driven. And I mean, there was a lot of very important things we did. I mean, this might be old news for everyone else, but we moved into a cloud during that time. I mean, some companies might have done it 10 years ago, but we didn't have the time and calm in the development team to do that, because we needed to sell, and we needed to sell new things. So and that's one of the most important things for us to be able to scale now, like having a completely cloud-based database, and be able to microservice that one as well. So it definitely was very much needed, and I'm very glad that it happened, because now we can scale much more with all the data that flows and we store.
Yeah, I think AWS just announced their figures. I can't remember the stats exactly, but it was something like, this is how much money we're making, but this is 2% of IT spend. So 98% of IT spend is still not on the cloud. And so you're definitely not the only one out there who hasn't moved. Monika, and I don't know because you're probably more in the design space, but do you know whether you had a similar kind of a tech issue there? Because you mentioned in your talk that you went from this kind of, oh, we'll make it easy to integrate, but then it wasn't so easy to integrate, to then making it super simple, which if you're making it super simple for your customers, you're taking all the complexity internally there.
Yeah.
So do you have any insights about how did your team manage that? Because I know you were saying some of the things about fast, but one of the ones I read was that they underestimated the technical challenge of what they were taking on. And that was taking them a lot longer to develop. So what's it been like from your perspective?
I mean, building a checkout is really hard. There's a lot of things you need to take into consideration. I don't know exactly what Fast struggled with. Also Bolt.
They were saying, so their point was that you thought, okay, I'll build universal checkout, but it was every single customer almost had a different integration, so they couldn't build something that was just plug and play, but you seem to have overcome this problem.
So what we've noticed is, I mean, our complexity on the integration grew because we were adding features, right? So you're adding new types of payment methods. They are asynchronous, so there's like more back and forth, and you need to include the webhooks, or you're adding some third-party service modules that now suddenly ask for additional information from the merchants. You need to add additional fields to pass into Primer, stuff like that. So our complexity of the integration grew as we were adding features. But looking at Fast, they have one feature, like it's one thing. So it's literally one button. They offer no alternative payment methods, and it's all processed by Stripe. So I actually struggle to understand where the complexity was and why they had, different, as you mentioned, different types of customers with different integrations. Because to me, it all sounds the same, but obviously would be interesting to learn what it was. And I'm also actually surprised to hear what were they working on for such a long time with such a big team. Well, it was just one button, right? So we started very, very simple. It was a checkout with a couple of payment methods that worked broadly the same way, and cards, obviously, and you could style and customize it. And then when we started adding new modules and different types of payment methods, like crypto, by the way, is also very, very different. Now the complexity grew, and we kind of didn't take care of the complexity. Rather, we just put it on the merchant to figure it out. And then we realized that it's unsustainable. It's not a good developer experience. So can we include more of the back and forth communication between the SDK and Primer CPI in the SDK itself? And it's all driven by the automation platform or workflows. So the checkout just does the right thing and displays the correct information back and forth until you just get, payment success, and you can show your success screen, whether you want to use Primers or your own.
Excellent. It's great to hear that you've overcome what they obviously couldn't.
I think that will be like a business case for the business schools coming up after it's too soon to talk about it.
Yeah, soon.
Well, the founder actually, we're getting very off topic, but he went on to a podcast like the day or two afterwards, and I'm thinking you probably shouldn't, but it was everybody's fault but his for the failure. So he absolved himself. But anyway, moving on. So I'm going to jump back into your talk, Jesper. So you mentioned the criticality of customer success in what you're building, and how can you explain a bit more about how it works that you get your information? So obviously customers contact customer success, but how does that filter through and feed through to your team?
So I mean, we have a quite complex product as well. Like, so customer success, so of course, like you said, they feed us with product ideas, but I mean, the most important reason for them being a very important part of our company is that our clients need some guidance if they want to use the really advanced functions, right? And the variation of the knowledge in our clients is very, very different. Like a sustainability manager on an investment company, they don't know anything about energy and technology, and they shouldn't. It's not a job, but they need someone to help them with that. So I think that's like one of the important things with our customer success department being very important. But what we do basically, every idea that comes in the dialogue with our customer success team and the clients, we save them in our project in Asana. And so far I have been personally going through all of them. It doesn't take too much time, because the thing is, I do it, our UX designer do it, and also our product owner do it, because it's a very, very good way of seeing like where are the tides shifting, because we know the roadmap, we understand which directions we want to move, but also getting a little bit of reality check. Like if we hear a lot of clients asking about a certain thing, of course now if you follow the sustainability news in EU right now, it's basically taxonomy. That's what everyone help us. How do we deal with the EU taxonomy? What numbers do we need? How do we sustainability report? So we understand like this is a shift in the market, and we hear it from our clients. They want to understand things. So basically we collect all ideas all the time, and if we know that it's something we're working on, we can put them in that project in Asana or that research project. If it's something for the future, we put it in a pile for the future to pick up on later. And we respond to the customer success so that they can talk to the clients as well, so they know they're being listened to. And I think one thing that changed there to avoid like too many chefs and also build a better relationship with our clients is that we talk to them a lot so that they understand also the difference between I've ordered something that IT should deliver, and this is an interesting idea that we might or might not do something with. And they understand that we listen to them, we take everything in, and we need to balance them for the greater good of all users, basically. So I think we found a good way of doing that and responding to them in a way that they don't expect it to come out in a couple of weeks. But when they do, we of course inform them that we're releasing new things, basically.
Excellent. And you said actually at the start that your personal background started in customer success before moving in. So do you think that's given you a slight bias towards that, or an advantage in a way of working like that?
I think it's more of an advantage. And I would all of the people that I have recruited for the product team is actually also internally recruited from the customer success team. So I think it's and now we actually having like all new recruits in our company will start a couple of weeks in the customer success team, and our sales team will start for a longer time. And I think it's really important because in that team you work with the clients every day. You know their pain points, you understand what they want on a daily basis. So I think that's a really good lesson to learn, and you get to be a bit more humble. I can't say like it's just the client who wants that, and they didn't understand what they want, because I understand, okay, if they want to if they have a problem that they want us to listen to, it probably is important to them, and we need to understand it. So I think it's only strength, and I was joking a little bit about that in the talk as well. But I mean, the importance of customer success to our company now and in the future is like that kind of service. As part of from our SaaS product is basically equally important, and I was think that it will continue, or even becoming more important when our product becomes even more advanced. I mean, I think that's what will happen.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it's always the focus on the customer. So it's great that you're getting that background. One thing, and I don't know if this is an issue for you, but it comes up a lot in the conversations about product managers. Should they be technical? Should they not? So do you have a technical background, or kind of, I guess, coming from customer service, I'm making the assumption that it's probably less technical. But is that an issue for you?
No, I mean, I have a technical background, but I mean, it's the wrong technical background, basically. So I'm a mechanical engineer. That's my my field of study. And I mean, in that field, I mean, of course, it's product development, but it's for physical products. So it's the work process, the understanding of which stakeholders you involve. It's basically the same if you have a physical product or code. And I mean, my understanding from the business of energy and the technical understanding of how energy works and stuff like that, I have from my research before. So I have that. I don't know code, basically, but I don't need to know code more than on a conceptual level, because we have great architects that understand, they're part of the tech team. And I mean, they will always know which is the best technical solution, and we talk about it. So they might ask me, or a product owner or UX designer, like, could we do this instead? It would be easier for us. And we always say yes, basically, because it's small tweaks. And I mean, we want to have an environment where the tech team also is empowered to themselves, not just doing what someone else says, but also be critical about, is this the right way of doing it? And then if they don't think it's right, they will tell us, and then we will talk about it, basically. So I don't need to know code, because they do, and they will let me know if we did something that's we're not supposed to do in the technical part of the product, basically.
Excellent. Monika, I just want to jump to your talk, because you mentioned that you have a developer success team. Is that essentially customer success because your customers are developers, or are your customers really the marketers who are buying it? What is your customer/developer success setup?
So it's not the same thing. So we do have customer success, which is usually talking to, the head of payments or the CTO or the payments product managers, or whoever is, sort of buying and making the decision to use Primer, who's the key stakeholder on the payment side. Developer success is obviously cares about the developers who are integrating Primer, but also, we want to build a community around Primer in the developer community. So I think that, if we do a good job on the developer experience side, developers will be choosing Primer over other payment solutions. And that's really, the goal. And there's a lot to be done on, developer experience. I think Stripe is famous for being developer-centric in the world of payments, at least. And literally every developer I know who's built a Stripe integration thought it was very, very painful. And they're still known for, the best developer experience. So I think there's a lot that can be done and improved. So we're just striving to, become the obvious choice for developers, and giving them an amazing experience, even when there's someone else in the organization who made the decision.
Great. And so with your developer success, is that like somebody to talk to, or is that team just focused on, we have to have the best API docs, we have to have, so it's more, can developers self-service, or is it a call center help type of a situation?
No, it's a product team. So it's a product team with the PM and engineers and a designer, and they obviously own our docs, our API reference, as you mentioned, but also thinking about what developer tools can we build to make the integration easier. So for example, testing tools, debugging tools, the developer section, and self-service, as you mentioned. And we're also trying to figure out, how can we improve things even more? So what other types of developer tools can we build to facilitate the integration, like a interactive integration walkthrough that helps you understand rather than just read through the docs. So that's essentially the developer success team, which is our product team.
Excellent. I completely misinterpreted that, so thanks for the clarification.
Yeah. Cool.
Great. So I think we've gone through all of my questions. Did you either of you have questions to each other? I know Jesper actually started off by getting in a few of his questions. But do you have any further questions? No.
I was thinking a little about. I think like one thing that also interested me, like you talked about, and also now that you have also like something that we struggle with, of course, but I think it's more maybe like clear for you as well. So I would want to understand a little bit more how you work with that, and that's the different kind of like users or of your products that are outside, like external stakeholders. You mentioned like the merchant, which might be what you would refer to as your client or customer, but then you have the developer as well. I didn't really understand that as well before you talked about it. I thought it was an internal developer, but now it's also an external client, and they have an end user also. And what I was wondering about, like, how do you balance all these needs? And then you have all the needs of the internal stakeholders that want to do like you to do different things. Like how did you manage to understand all these needs and putting them together? Because my guess is that they don't know each other's needs, like in the organizations you work with either. So someone needs to help them, right?
Yeah, actually, there's more than that, because we also build parts of the product specifically for support teams. So we have a lot of support agents using, because oftentimes when there's something wrong with payments, right? So we have like massive support teams who are just using Primer's dashboard to find that transaction and inform their customers, like, oh, why the payment didn't go through, or why they cannot have a refund, or whatever the case might be. So that's very different types of user. We also have products for finance teams. So financial reporting and reconciliation, which is again very different type of user that cares about like the output rather than configuring the payment strategy. And even to make it even more complex, we also have partners. So all the third-party applications that you can use on Primer, most often we partner with these services. So we call them partners, and they will soon be opening up and allowing third parties to build integrations to Primer without us being even involved. So that's, again, a different type of user, which we're building, we call it Primer Connect, separate dashboard for. What we do is basically we have those teams that are built around a problem area of a specific user, right? So we allow the developer success team to focus only on the developers that are building integrations to Primer. The Primer Connect team only focuses on partners and their developers, and the payments operations team focuses on the finance teams. So it's quite easy to have this like very, very specific focus when you have very clear product ownership over a specific area, and you don't have to decide or define priorities between those teams, because they're independent and they have their own set of KPIs, their own roadmap. There is, in many cases, there are dependencies, right? Like the checkout works along workflows and so on and so forth. So the teams do collaborate a lot, but they have their specific users that they can focus on.
Oh, that's interesting. That sounds like a good approach. So then you basically have like each team are experts on the certain product area as well. And in the cases where those product areas in the product need to have some API or some like integration between them, they will sort it out. But usually they are like they operate product-wise also. They are not affected by each other's in that.
Yes, so we're trying to find this like separation of concerns to make sure that everyone is independent and can move as fast as they possibly can within their product area. But the reality is, of course, that there are interdependencies and people collaborate and share information.
Sure.
Great. Yeah. That was a great summary. Actually, I really like that structure. It's perfect for the customer centricity approach that we advocate of, kind of each team focus on a particular customer. I think that's all we have time for today, but I really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you to Monika and Jesper for sharing all of your insights and thoughts.